that I could never measure how far the ripples have gone. I just got total goosebumps when I said that. If I could have my life experience, what I've learned, my knowledge, my expertise go so far and wide that I can't even measure it, then fuck, I have fulfilled my life's purpose. Welcome to Flip the Inner Script, a podcast for female founders who are over their inner critic showing up when they are scaling to bigger things. This podcast is for the woman who has built something and still finds herself wondering why success doesn't feel the way she thought it would. We'll dive deep into inner stories, social conditioning, self-leadership, identity, and what it actually takes to master being the woman who meets her next level. This is your permission slip to finally flip the script so that you can unlock the success you dream about. Let's go. Holy cats, I am back recording. And in fact, I feel so rusty that I sat here for like 3 minutes deciding how I wanted to even start this episode. Hello, it's me. It's Andrea. I'm back. Welcome to the completely rebranded, relaunched Flip the Inner Script podcast, formerly the Balance and Bliss podcast. So if you've been here in this community for a while and you've been waiting for a new episode of the Balance and Bliss podcast to drop, and now you see this one and you're like, what is happening? That is what's happening. So I have been on podcast hiatus for almost 3 years. I decided to put my podcast down in September 2023, and I'll tell you a little bit more about that story. But ever since then, I have just missed podcasting and connecting with my community in this way. It was one of those things where, and it's so funny because I used to always be worrying about what people thought that I was going to say, or what people thought about me, or caring if people even were going to care what I had to say. And the reality is that there have been so many women that have been impacted by this podcast. There have been so many women that have been impacted by my books and by the communities that I have, and so many clients that I've worked with who have had massive, massive change and impact. And I mean, that is one of my ultimate deep core values, is creating impact for people. And so if that is what I desire, that is what I stand by, then I have an obligation and a responsibility to show up on the mic to connect with people in this way in the podcast realm, because how dare I not? How dare I not share this gift with the world? And, this isn't a mindset, of course, that I have always had, but listen, this is the mindset that I have now, and I am back, and I want to tell you a little bit about where I went. So let's go back to September 2023. I was recording, editing, producing a solo podcast at that time, and simultaneously, like, I was doing all of the things. In September 2023, Clara, my eldest daughter, went back to school. Eloise, my second daughter, was in full-time daycare, and I was like really gunning for that time of the year. Prior to that, Eloise was born in July 2022, and I went on mat leave from my part-time teaching job, and I did not go on mat leave from my business, my Balance and Bliss coaching business. And as much as I was doing so much heart-fueling work, like, it was a lot, like, I was figuring out what it would be like, or what it was like to be a mom of 2 kids and navigating that life transition. I was doing the podcast. I was, running co-author projects. I was starting to write my book at that time. I was planning the biggest event of my career. I was getting out there more in terms of my career. I was speaking more. I was connecting more. I was seeing clients. I was planning an international retreat, like so many things that I was doing during this time, really trying to grow and expand my business. Because listen, we start our businesses because we want them to be successful, and they're not going to be successful if we sit at home, do nothing. And I really, truly believed that if you don't like if you do what you love, you won't work a day in your life. And so I just did. I did. I did in the evenings. I did during nap time. I tried to work in every block and pocket of time that I could. Again, on all of the things that really fueled me, that really filled me up. And then when September 2023 happened, we're back in school. I remember I was sitting in the parking lot at Waterloo Town Square, and I was in my car, and I had just finished a really exciting meeting, and I just felt this overwhelming sense of panic. I don't know if you can relate with this, where it's just like you feel like everything's going right, and yet your body is just screaming at you. And that was me. And at the time, I didn't know what was happening. I had spent so many years doing inner work and working through my anxiety and going to therapy. And I did all of those things. So I had a lot of the tools, and yet I still could not pull myself out of this like anxious energy that was it was constant. And I just remember being able to pinpoint it in that moment in my car. And then I was just like really hyper aware of it. And that month I got hand, foot, and mouth from my daughter, who got it at daycare. I did not know that adults could get hand, foot, and mouth. Okay. I did not know. In addition to that, I was breaking out in this rash on my face, on my nose, around my eyes. This was in addition to the anxiety that I was already feeling. Like I remember this one moment where I was sitting down and watching a movie with my husband, and I'm watching the movie, and I could tell you exactly what movie it was. It was about this guy, like it's the guy from Pitch Perfect. I forget what his name is. He's also on, I think, Parks and Rec or some other kind of show. It doesn't matter. Anyway, it does not matter. But I was watching this movie about like this phone, and this phone was so like he was so connected to it. And I'm watching the movie, so I'm intaking the movie, but I almost felt like I was having this out of body experience. And if you run your own business, like right? There's so many tabs open at any given time. And I mean, I can confidently say that I've gotten to a place in my business and in my mindset that I can close those tabs quite quickly. But at this time I was just like thinking about all the things that I had to do, waiting for the moment that I could sit down and do them. And yet, when I checked things off my list, I still felt like I had so much to do. And I was laying in bed at night, in the dark with this anxious panic feeling, the same one that I felt in my car that day. And I was just like, I don't understand what's happening. And fast forward later in that month, I went to a brunch. I went to a female founders brunch, and it was a connection event. I was going with two other friends of mine who were also coaches, and it was at a town. I'm packing my bag to go there the next day, and I'm just in tears. I'm crying, like sobbing and I'm like, why am I even crying? Like I was so overwhelmed. I messaged the girls, and I was like, I don't even know like if I can come. I sent this really raw and vulnerable voice note, and I was like, I don't know what's happening to me. I don't know if I can come or not. And they were so great. They were like, listen, we will take you however you are, and we would love to encourage you to come and let us like pour into you and let us support you, but also we understand if you feel like you need to stay home. And I did end up going, and we went to the fabulous brunch event at the Pearl, and then we stayed at the hotel overnight. And so we just went back up to our room and put our robes on. And that's what we did for the rest of the evening. We stayed in our hotel room. We watched TV. We ordered pizza. I cried a whole lot. And one of the things that came out of that conversation was, and maybe you're listening going like, hello, alarm bells, you were burnt out, Andrea. But I never really like connected with that identity or that like word even really. I was like, how can you be burnt out by all of the things that you love? Like everything is so exciting right now. And one of the things that felt really heavy was that I had a keynote, my first keynote opportunity in October, of which was in a month. And I was like, how am I ever going to possibly be ready to deliver this keynote on stage when I feel like this? And one of the things that we talked about was, as much as we love everything that we have to do, sometimes we need to put something down. And we were literally like mapping out, okay, what are all the things that I'm doing? How many hours are they taking me? How much time am I spending on those things? And where can I delete something off of my plate that is going to give me time back? And that one of the it was the podcast. And when my friend suggested maybe you need to put the podcast on pause right now, I just cried even more. I was like, I love the podcast. I love sharing in this way and talking and connecting. Like, it's so beautiful. It's so impactful. It makes such a difference. And, there's also that element of like, I was worried about what people would think. Like, I've been podcasting for 3 years and like, are they going to think that I just quit and that I just gave up and, was putting all my time and energy into this thing? And now it's just like, are they going to think that it was a failure? Like all of these things that we do without listening to ourselves. And so they said, you know what, you don't have to make a decision right now. And I really appreciated that. And I slept on it, which is another thing that I've been getting a lot better at, is not answering in the moment. It's just like, let's sleep on this. Let's sit. Let's let this text message stay unread for 3 hours. Or let's actually verbally, I actually said to somebody a couple months ago when they asked me about an opportunity, I said, listen, can I take some time to think about this and get back to you by the end of the day? And it's amazing. They were just like, yeah, no problem. So I took some time to think about this podcast deletion off my plate and, stopping the podcast for now. And I woke up in the morning and I just had so much clarity. I was like, as much as I love this, I'm going to burn myself out. And I'm just going to, it doesn't matter. I don't need to make some big public declaration that I'm putting the podcast down or explain to people all of the details of why I'm putting the podcast down. I've shared snippets of this story in various talks and in my book, which I will get to. But what if you just stopped putting out episodes? And so that's what I did. I just went to all the interviews and everything that I had booked up until that point, and I just said, you know what? There's been a change of circumstances. I need to cancel all recordings going forward. And I just stopped producing the podcast. And when I tell you the relief that I felt as I started to create more white space in my calendar after making that decision, I knew it was the right one. And I knew that if I ever returned to the podcast, that it would be different, that I would be different, and that I would have to do things a different way. And so the way that I am showing up to this podcast is going to be totally different because I've learned so much and I've given myself that space. But I mean, that's where I've been. That's where I've been. And it's been really actually interesting to see what has happened in the podcast realm since then. I've left all of the previous podcast episodes up so that people can consume the content, and people still do. Like, you're still here, you're still listening, you're downloading episodes, you're letting me know how they've resonated with you. Every week I get an email from my podcast hosting site that says you've had this many downloads, and it fluctuates. Some weeks it's like 4 and some weeks it's like 100. And, like week over week, there's still new people being impacted by the words that I'm sharing. And so it still ultimately is serving that deeply rooted why for me of like creating that impact so far that I could never measure how far the ripples have gone. I just got total goosebumps when I said that. If I could have my life experience, what I've learned, my knowledge, my expertise go so far and wide that I can't even measure it, then fuck, I have fulfilled my life's purpose. And what a blessing it is to be able to do that. And so the podcast has been like doing its thing, since I have been on hiatus for these last almost 3 years. But like, what have I been doing? in that amount of time. Well, I'm still a coach and I'm a fucking great coach if I do say so myself. And I have really gotten clear on the types of women that I am working with. And so if you are here, if this show has found you, it's likely that you are highly ambitious. It's likely that you are high achieving and that you are a female founder who has started something with your heart. And we start these businesses, we're really really excited about them, we want them to be successful, and oftentimes we do that at the risk of ourselves, or at the expense rather of ourselves. And we say yes to all the things, we abandon what we originally set out for because it's like, well, I have to make money and I want this to be successful. And there's a lot of inner narrative that's like wrapped up in what success means, right? And like what we should be doing when we're starting our own business, and how we should be doing things, and the things we should be saying yes to, and how many hours we should be working a day, and all of these things. Like there's so many hats that we have to wear, but there's also so many thoughts that we have in general. But also when we have our own business and it's like our family on the line, our livelihood on the line, our reputation on the line, that makes the stakes so much higher. And the women that I work with, we work all around the inner script, which is why this podcast is called Flip the Inner Script, and or depending on the people that I'm talking to, shut that inner bitch up, because those voices, the more we grow, the more is on the line, the louder they become. And the louder that they become, it creates this dysregulation in our body. We start to feel a little bit unsafe because it's like, well, I can't rest because this is on the line. And if I rest, then this could happen and this could happen. And we get overwhelmed and we overthink and we hypothesize and we catastrophize. And it's just like, there is a different way. Not only is there a different way, but when we're thinking about growing our business and scaling, we think about marketing, we think about systems, we think about processes, we think about all of the things on the exterior.
Stay with us. We'll be right back.
If something in today's episode is landing for you where you literally thought to yourself, okay, this is me, then I want you to listen up. I work with ambitious women and female founders who are done hitting the same invisible wall. The ones that are tired of second guessing themselves, tired of success feeling harder than it should be, and are ready to do the real inner work that actually moves the needle forward. This work is deep, it is transformational, but we clear the mental clutter and we flip the script on the stories that have been running the show. And all of this starts with a simple, free 20-minute connection call. You and me outside of this show and in real life, having conversations about where you might want to go. So if you're ready, and something in you kind of already knows that, if you're here listening, then I want you to click on the link below, answer the few questions, book a call, and I would love to meet you. But not often do we think about what goes on inside and ourselves. And there's this joke out there that entrepreneurship is like, haha, joke's on you. It's the biggest fucking personal growth journey you'll ever go on, because there is so much that you have to do to show up day in and day out. And there's also so much that goes on inside that actually prevents you from showing up and doing the things that you want to do, and feeling confident and trusting yourself enough to do those things. And so those are the women that I work with now, these badass women who have heart and visions and dreams, but really they need to harness that inner self leadership, that inner script, that inner narrative, the stories, the shoulds, all of this identity stuff that impacts our ability to actually grow and expand to enough to hold the success and the money that we want. Like, we all want to be comfortable, beyond comfortable, like to be in such abundance that we can do incredible things. And it requires a lot from us to hold all of that. And so That's what I'm doing now. It's been such an incredible evolution since the last time you heard me on this microphone. And one of those things is the launch of my book. Back in March, I launched my second solo book, and this book is called Embody Bliss. And you can see it in the show notes. You can grab a copy if you like, right directly through there. But it's all about breaking free from the shoulds and moving into more joy. And it is a memoir style, so it's heavy in storytelling. I love to tell stories. I feel like it connects us so deeply as humans. So it's a memoir style self help guide, really to finding inner peace. Okay. Every chapter is a principle that I feel like is so valuable when you are growing and evolving and expanding and on this pursuit to health, or to wellness and happiness and bliss and inner peace. And so, it starts with, which is a lot of the stuff we're going to talk about on this show going forward, is, it starts with the power of your mind and the thought work and the stories that we carry. And those stories dictate our thoughts, right? They are the basis of the inner script. And so we talk in that book about the stories and which ones are yours and which ones are other people's, and how often other people's stories are in our minds. But beyond that, also, how many times we're worried about what other people are going to think. And really, we are the ones that are holding ourselves back. In the book, we talk about the relationship that you have with yourself and the relationship with others and all of these beautiful, incredible things. And it's just such a fabulous book that I'm so proud of. And the feedback that I'm getting about this book has been wonderful. I was listening to a voice note this morning from a friend, and she said, I just feel like you are sitting there reading this book to me. I hear it in my ear when you're speaking. And it's just, that's exactly what I wanted when I wrote that book. So that's been really exciting. And also, that in itself was a growth journey, which I think maybe that's its own podcast episode, just talking about all of the stories that were coming up for me as I was getting closer to the launch of this book. When we launch something new, we are expanding ourselves. And when we expand ourselves, that makes us more vulnerable, and it requires a lot of courage. And it asks us to expand our capacity before it's actually been expanded, sometimes before we even feel ready. And oftentimes we don't do the thing until we feel ready, but it's actually, in reverse. We have to do the thing first, ready or not ready, unsure, scared, and with a whole lot of trust. And when we do that, that is when we leave room for magic to happen. So going forward on this podcast, I'm still the Balance Bliss everywhere on Instagram, my website, all of that. I still very much am in the balance and bliss realm. But we are going to talk all things your inner script, because your inner script is the best way that I can describe it is it's everything. It is literally the lens of how you see everything through. And depending on what's going on for you on that day, your inner script can be loud, it can be quiet, it can actually cause you to stop dead in your tracks. We're going to talk about social conditioning and how that is so deeply ingrained in us that dictates how we show up in our business. We're going to talk about identity. I'm really seeing this as a solo podcast where I get on the mic with you and we chat and we connect. And if you want to take the work further and deeper, you can always book a call with me. There's a link in the show notes every single episode. And I'm just here to, create that impact for you. I will leave you with this. I shared earlier in this episode that when we're trying to have our business be really, really successful, it's like, okay, what can I invest in? Doing the ads and what rooms can I get into? Maybe you've thought about that, maybe you haven't. But the reality is that in your business and in your life, okay, you are your biggest asset. And if you take care of you first on a really, really deep level, get comfortable with every single part of you, the light ones, the ones that exist in the darkness, the ones that exist in the shame. If you can really explore and get comfortable with every single part of you, then that is how you master the woman that you know that you're meant to be, the woman that you're dreaming to be, to have the success that you're dreaming to have, to scale in the way that you want to. That's how you do it. You do it by looking at the inner script and really mastering that and continuing to have the conversations about it. Because as you are going through the human experience, you will continue to be put in spaces and places and situations and experiences that will ask you to look at different parts of you. And so I hope you will tune in here every single week. We're back to a weekly show. I can't even believe that I'm back. And that can we just take a minute for the fact that I just recorded my first podcast episode? What the fuck? Okay, I'm real excited. I'm so glad that you're here, and I will catch you next week on Flip the Inner Script. That's a wrap on today's episode. If something you heard hit home for you, share it with someone who you think could resonate with it too. I'd love for you to subscribe to the show and leave a review. Your reviews help this podcast reach more women like you who need it. And as a thank you, if you screenshot your review and send it to me on Instagram at the.balance.bliss, I will send you a special gift as a thank you. Ready to go deeper? Grab my book, Embody Bliss, break free from the shoulds and move into more joy through the link in the show notes. Or if you're curious about working together, your free 20-minute connection call is waiting. Love you for sharing your time with me today. Now go flip that inner script. See you next time.